On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Anareta by Horrendous. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
We're two professional broadcasters. We like metal and we like to talk about it. And today we're going back to 2015 to talk about a album from a band we haven't talked about in quite a while. Not since episode 50 something.
Right.
The last time we talked about yes, the very first week.
We did a lot of episodes.
We were
back
just
then.
young boys back then. But yeah, Horrendous is a progressive death metal band from Philadelphia. And they haven't put out an album in a while. They apparently finished working on one recently and are going to be putting it out sometime soon.
I bet it's horrendous.
But this is their third album, which actually came out just a year after their second album.
Wow.
And they apparently sequestered themselves in one of their apartments and just sat and wrote this thing for a month. I don't know if it was self-recorded or not, but if it was self-recorded, goddamn.
Yeah. Great job.
Holy shit. But I'm not sure if that is the case. I didn't look at it quite that deeply.
Right.
But
where are they from again?
They're from Philadelphia.
Philadelphia?
They're from Philly. And now you're thinking of a cheesesteak. So I guess, how are you besides hungry?
I'm doing good. I feel fine. Sweaty, but I'm tired.
It's warm.
Yeah, it got to 80 today.
Did it?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't check before I left work to see how warm it got.
It got over 80. What else is there anything going on? There's nothing going on in my life right now.
Nothing at all?
I mean, nothing I want to talk about like on the podcast.
Yeah.
Sure.
I get it.
Yeah, but not a whole lot. I started watching Sweet Tooth on Netflix. I think
You've mentioned this a few times. It sounds like a strange show.
It is a strange show, and it's one of those where, I mean, I don't know if I like this, so I'm going to watch one more. Shows. I still don't know if I like this, but I got to know what happens in the next episode. You know?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
I like it, I think.
You're invested in it.
I'm invested in it.
To keep going.
Yes.
It might be one of those things where you stop watching it, and when you have once the season is done or whatever, you can take a moment and be like, okay, I know how that part ends. So, and you can sort of review the whole thing and figure out whether or not you liked it.
Right.
Like there are some products where it is really hard to figure out whether or not you like it or it's good until it's done.
There are some foods like that. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't figure out if I like this burger. Let me eat the whole thing.
I'm gonna eat the whole thing. You get. What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
You suck it down. I don't know. You no, that's not what you do with a burger.
You wharf it down.
You woof it, and then at the end you go,
it was all right.
Okay.
I mean, you're not going to not eat the whole burger.
Sure.
It's
a burger.
What would your parents say?
Exactly.
Something about starving children in Africa.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think it's the case with TV shows a lot more so than movies of you sometimes need the context of the whole thing to really figure out whether or not you it's always you need the context of the whole thing to figure out whether or not you like it. I don't think it's the case in the opposite direction. If you watch the first episode of a show and go I don't like that at all, then
it's immediate.
You generally are probably not going to change your opinion by watching more of it.
There's been plenty of movies though where I like this movie, and then the last 10 minutes you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, there are plenty.
Why?
I'm trying to think of an example of a movie I've seen like that where the ending just completely ruins it. I just got TV on the brain, so all I'm thinking of now is Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah. What do you mean? Game of Thrones was ruined at the end?
Yeah, everyone likes season 8. Everyone likes the way
that's their favorite one. Yeah,
that's everyone's favorite season of Game of Thrones.
I can only imagine they did like a table read at some point, and then Dumb and Dumber left, and everybody else in the room was like, "Are you fucking with me?"
It kind of didn't take until
it didn't take that long?
left the room.
Oh, they did it when they were still there.
People, they weren't loud about it, but you can like find clips of table reads from the episodes for the last season, and the looks on the actors' faces. We all, as the audience, can identify them as like, oh, they know this is awful. Yeah. I'm sure Dan and David thought like, oh, they're really shocked by this. Oh, they're like their jaws are on the floor with
they are.
with how how shocking they find this and how unexpected a twist this will be, because to them it's more important that your expectations are subverted than the product it being good.
Right. Like that last moment in the series with Peter Dinklage when he announces who the new king will be. You could just see the look on his face is like, I don't want to be here.
I don't want to say this.
No, I don't.
My favorite clip is the episode from the episode where Varys dies.
Sure.
And what's that actor's name? Something Hill.
Benny Hill.
Yeah, Benny Hill.
No.
Anyway, he is like done reading his script.
Loreth or something like that?
I think it's like
Conlon. Yeah.
Conlon. Yeah. Conleth. Conleth Hill is reading along with the script as the episode finishes up. And he just kind of looks up with just this dead expression on his face and plops his script down on the table in front of him, like he's so done with it. And then, in interviews, he talked about how frustrated he was with the fact that they made Varys so fucking stupid.
Right.
He's throughout season 7 and 8, he's constantly doing dumb shit that he shouldn't be doing as one of the smartest people in the world.
He's the spider. I mean,
he's one of the smartest, most clever people in the entire world, and he's acting like an absolute moron. Tyrion suffers from the exact same treatment.
Right, because he's supposed to drink and know things, but now he just kind of drinks.
Yeah, and apparently doesn't know anything. Right. That's Jon Snow's. That's Jon Snow's role.
You know nothing,
is
Jon
to be
Snow.
The one who doesn't know things.
I wonder if he was saying, what's that actor's name again? I'm forgetting it.
I don't know.
Jon Snow.
Now you've infected me with your inability to know names.
My inability to know things. It's not Crapper. It's Harrington. Kit Harrington.
Kit Harrington. Yeah. I see what you did there.
Yeah, you see exactly what I did there. Yeah. His grandfather did fill out the flesh.
Yeah, that's actually his family.
Yeah. Imagine he had to wonder on telling himself, I wish I didn't know this.
I wish I didn't know this.
I wish I knew nothing.
One of my favorite things is interviews with now the name thing.
Oh no,
it's happened. The actor for Tywin. Any other day of the week, I would be able to tell you off the top of my head.
Off the top of your head, what he was in. He was in The Last Action Hero. He's been in a shitload of movies. What the fuck is his name?
All right, I'm looking.
I'm gonna beat you there with my brain. With my brain.
Are you? No, you're not.
I'm not.
You're not gonna do it. Charles Dance. Anyway, interviews with Charles Dance where they asked him his thoughts, and him basically saying like, I'm really glad Tywin died in season 4. So he didn't have to suffer the indignity the other characters were treated with.
It's kind of a mirror to reality. It's kind of like me and Jeff and JD kind of, we all see the world and how it's going right now thinking, so glad I'm old and I'll be dead soon.
Yeah. whenever like Jeff is talking, our coworker Jeff is talking a lot about AI lately and always thought it's going to take over radio. And I'm sitting there like, I'm 27, gang.
Yeah.
I got a lot of years left potentially in this business. No, I don't, because
AI.
I'm aware. I'm well aware that I have hitched my my trailer to a Ford F-150 that is on its last legs.
Right. You may as well have gotten a degree in watchmaking. I mean,
but in any case, whenever those conversations come up, just like, All right. Yeah, cool. Yeah, let the machines take everything over. I knew I should have gone into fucking IT.
Mm-hmm. Which I guess your job may morph into that anyway.
I don't have the qualifications for that.
You have to go back to school.
Yeah, I'm not qualified to be an information technology technician. That's I don't know, like because all the fucking computer science classes, that's all fucking math and shit,
right?
And that was always my worst subject.
Sure.
I am incapable of it, which is why I got a job where I just have to talk a bunch because I'm good at that. So yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about something else.
Speaking of talking a bunch, that's the thing we did this past weekend. You did on Friday. You announced not a local comedian.
Well, yes,
Bob Zaney. He's from, I don't know where he's from.
Las Vegas.
Is he from Las Vegas? Yeah.
That's where he lives anyway.
That's where he lives. And then I announced him on Saturday.
Yeah. He did a show in town. And, he, I didn't stick around just because I didn't really want to.
Right. But I did because, normally I would have my 11-year-old Saturday nights.
Yeah.
But my 11-year-old informed me at the last minute, hey, I'm spending the night with Tyler. We're going to play video games all night. I'm like, okay, I guess.
All right.
And so I'm there, and then Bob was like, hey, after the show, can you mention that I'm signing T-shirts and I got merch at the table back there and whatnot? So I guess I'm like, I guess I'm staying for the show. Yeah. And then of course, all throughout, there was an opening act who's from Grand Forks.
Yeah.
The whole time he's up there, and I guess the whole time Bob was up there as well. The bar manager and our sales rep for the landing kept buying me shots of vodka.
Oh no!
Yeah. So that by the end of it, I'm like, Bob's good to see you again. I am not sticking around. I'm leaving, or this is going to. Yeah, there's going to be a turning point, and things are going to go terribly embarrassing for me.
Things are going to get bad.
So I'm leaving. Time
to go home.
Yeah.
See, on Friday, I didn't stick around because it was just I just didn't really want to stay. And it was like, if I'm going to be giving up an hour and a half to 2 hours of my Friday night, I should at least be getting paid for it.
Yeah, because we weren't getting paid for that.
I wasn't. So I wanted to go home and enjoy what was left of my Friday night. Because, even if I have any kind of engagement, even if it's a very short engagement, the entire time leading up to that, if there's a big gap between the last thing I have to do before
being at work,
I get done with work at 4:30 and the show isn't until 8. I can't think of doing anything else that entire time.
Right, that's ruined for you.
That entire gap, I can't do anything in that gap. I am paralyzed.
Right.
And then after it, it's recovering from having to go and do the thing. Yeah. So the night is basically forfeit. It's basically ruined.
Your life is forfeit.
Your life is forfeit. Were you trying to do the Faramir thing?
Yeah.
My life is forfeit. I can't do a David Wenham. He has a kind of a weird voice. David Wenham.
Yeah.
He has kind of a weird sort of voice. It's not a bad voice. It's just it's just a different sort of manner to him.
It's got a different texture.
But brain not work.
Brain not work?
I was maybe trying to think of a segue, but I couldn't think of one. I finished the Dead Space remake.
Yes, you did.
Which I told you about, and I'm very happy with how it all went. They continued the trend of not fucking with the sauce too much.
Nice.
Except when to, areas in which the sauce needed to be improved. They did so, and they handled it quite well.
Nice.
There were some kind of plot inconsistencies in the original game that you notice retroactively once you know the twist at the end of the game,
right?
Where it makes you go like, wait, if that's been true, then what the fuck was all of that?
Exactly.
And so the remake kind of explains. They come up with a reason to make it make sense,
right?
Which I really appreciated because it sort of it clears up that plot hole and that inconsistency, which for pedants like myself is very nice.
Because you realize that at the shooting at the beginning of the game, Bruce Willis actually died in the bedroom.
Yeah, Bruce Willis was dead the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, minor spoilers, that is kind of the twist of the game.
Yeah.
It's not that Isaac's been dead the whole time. It's that his girlfriend, Nicole, has been dead the whole time. And the way they make that work is the woman you think is Nicole is actually a different woman that you had met previously in the game. And she thinks you are someone else, and you're both having this mutual hallucination brought on by this terrifying artifact.
And you both snap out of it during coitus.
Oh, that would be awful. We don't need any coitus in Dead Space.
No.
It would be a little out of place.
It would be. I mean,
one of my favorite additions is there is what the developers called the peeling system, which is similar to a sort of system of like gameplay elements that are in a number of recent games. This idea of like shooting an enemy in a certain spot will have like a degrading effect on the character model in that specific spot. Like I think Doom Eternal is probably one of the best examples that of like shooting a demon in this specific spot will like chip away the flesh on that spot of the demon.
You can disarm certain demons.
Yeah. And like even Halo Infinite, which is rated teen, does that with like the armor on the aliens. But in Dead Space, it is, there's so much more gory detail to that. And it actually has a lot more utility because how much flesh has been blasted off a limb is your meter for figuring out how close you are to chopping it off.
Nice.
Versus like in Doom, it still takes the same amount of shots to the body, regardless of where you hit them. It doesn't matter if if you blasted all the flesh off of this imp's arm, it still takes the same number of shots with the gun, unless you shoot it in the head.
Which is all the opposite of a From game.
Yeah. But like,
alive, dead.
But like the in Dead Space, like the way you kill necromorphs is by chopping their limbs off.
Sure.
And to do that, you have a arsenal full of repurposed mining equipment. And so like being able to tell on a necromorph how close you are to blasting off that limb with your plasma cutter is actually really useful. And there are certain weapons like the force gun, which actually rip all of the skin off of an enemy at once.
Nice.
It is, I don't know technically what the force gun is supposed to be. It kind of plays like this extremely powerful sound blast. And it's basically the game's equivalent to a shotgun almost.
Sure.
But it doesn't really do a lot of direct damage. Most of what it does is like stagger damage and like crowd control. But like in the original game, it was just like, all right, it's going to push these necromorphs back. It's going to stagger them. And maybe they, maybe they're going to fall down.
Right.
And then in the remake, it rips all of their skin off.
Nice.
And it's disgusting but incredibly satisfying. It's probably like the best oh shit gun in the game of like oh shit like something just something pops up in front of you and you just pull that thing out and give yourself some space.
Is it powered by midichlorians or?
Yeah, it's powered by midichlorians. Microscopic life forms that live inside of all of us, which give us connection to the force. Exactly. The more of those you have, the more you can manipulate the force. For anyone who has not seen Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Right. With Hollywood mega superstar Jake
Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, the Dead Space remake, absolutely fantastic, wonderful. And I'm hoping that they remake the second one. They kind of don't need to. Like, I need to go back and replay Dead Space 2. But it kind of exists in my memory, and according to videos I've seen on the internet somewhat recently, other people's memories as well, as kind of a perfect game. Like I don't know if it needs to be remade. It didn't have some of the same like issues that the first Dead Space had to justify being remade. It's almost perfect, Dead Space 2. So I don't see a ton of areas in which it could really be improved. But that said, it would be great to, see more Dead Space anything, because I was and continue to be very fond of the franchise. And it had, lain fallow for almost a decade.
Sure.
Because people kind of didn't care for Dead Space 3 too much, which I don't blame them for. I think I only replayed it one time.
Yeah.
Versus the other two, which, 4 or 5 times each, if not more. Like Dead Space 3 has some neat ideas, but is just simply not very scary at all.
And it's a horror game, essentially.
It ends up being a lot more of an action game. It kind of goes a little too far down the Aliens rabbit hole.
Gotcha.
Of going from tense atmospheric horror to being a horror action movie.
Right.
It leans a little too far into the action.
Which works for Aliens.
It worked for Aliens, and it worked for Dead Space 2 as well. Like Dead Space 2 is more of an action game than 1 is by far, but it's still very, very scary at points.
Gotcha.
3 leaned a little too far into the action game. Like there's occasionally like human enemies that show up. There's like necromorphs that have guns that'll shoot at you. That like they fucked with the sauce too much.
Sure.
In Dead Space 3. They broke something or they fixed something that wasn't broken. And it just didn't, it fell kind of flat. It had this interesting but kind of unwanted weapon crafting mechanic where like you didn't have just the plasma cutter and the pulse rifle. You had like a weapon frame that you could do all kinds of like crafting to and mix and match all of these different elements to create a unique gun.
Sure.
That still, like, most of them had the same basic bones as the original like arsenal, but there were different ways you could mix things up. Like you could take the line gun and give it like the rotation mechanism from the plasma cutter, which is neat, but yeah, it fell a little flat, because then it felt like, because there were so many different combinations, it felt like it was easy to end up with something that wasn't optimal. And I found myself online, like looking like, what's the best gun? Whereas, in the previous games, it was just like, oh, you have all these different guns. In the first one, it was obvious that the plasma cutter was the best gun. And it's also the first gun they give you. Like, it's not difficult to go through the entirety of Dead Space 1 using nothing but the plasma cutter.
Right.
It's the equivalent of playing all of Doom 2016 with nothing but the pistol, except in this case, the pistol is actually good.
Sure.
Versus the pistol in Doom 2016, which is a piece of trash.
Right.
But like,
cool if the pistol was like the BFG. I mean,
it's really, really good. Or it's more like if the pistol was the super shotgun.
Sure.
Basically, like it's, and for that reason, it's extremely iconic. Dead Space 2, you could alternate between weapons a little bit more without feeling like, oh, this one kind of sucks, this one kind of sucks. A lot of the other original guns in Dead Space 1 kind of sucked compared to the plasma cutter.
Sure.
And that was a big thing that they changed in the remake, where a lot of them felt way more balanced and a lot more worthwhile for upgrading. All right, let's talk about music.
Okay.
What
kind of music do you like?
Oh, I like polka.
Yeah.
And I like jazz.
I enjoy the popular selections of the day.
Just whatever's popular.
Sure. Radio.
I like to listen to the radio. Yeah, you will not hear Horrendous on the radio.
No, probably not. Well, maybe not here.
Maybe satellite radio.
Sure.
Maybe there's a satellite radio station somewhere. So Horrendous, as we said at the beginning of the episode, is a progressive death metal band from Philadelphia. They're established in 2009. Their first album, The Chills, came out in 2011 and kind of made waves and sort of established themselves as sort of death metal revivalists, I guess you could call them. Not that death metal itself had died or gone away, but their style has always been kind of a
This feels
callback.
a little bit,
but it's like their style has always had more than a little influence of like from death and that sort of thing, of like late 80s death metal. But, you know, before pre-Cannibal Corpse, when it was basically Death and a handful of other bands.
It sounds like, you know, maybe Leprosy or
there's lots and lots of influence from like the definitely old school style of death metal before, you know, you start adding in some of the really, really brutal, really gory kind of aspects that would carry it through the 90s, basically. And there's definitely, I think, like the influence from like Swedish death metal bands that you can hear in here. And then there's a whole lot of other elements. Their first two albums, as I understand, were a bit more straight up, kind of like classic old school death metal revivals. This album is kind of the one where, as I understand it, it's generally accepted that they really started to bring in a lot more influences, that sort of post-metal vibe, a lot more, you know, influences from, you know, thrash and from progressive metal and from doom metal and bits and pieces of everything. The core is absolutely still death metal, but there's a lot going on to sort of accent things. I told you earlier today that like a couple of songs to me feel like if Chuck Schuldiner and Michael Ackerfeld had a baby.
It would be a very strange baby.
It would be a strange baby.
Yeah.
Beautiful curly long hair and just the deepest voice.
Right. With a lot of anxiety.
It's born with a Swedish accent.
A very dry sense of humor.
It just comes out that way. But yeah, their most recent album is called Idol. It came out in 2018. We talked about it.
IDOL?
Yeah. A few years ago when we talked about it. And that's like one of my favorite death metal albums to have come out like in the last decade.
Nice.
It's a fantastic album. I hadn't listened to a lot of their stuff before Idol all that much. Like I think their album from the year before this one, which was, I think it's supposed to be pronounced Exdesis. I'm not sure.
Exodus?
No, it's not. It's not Exodus. I know how to pronounce that. It's spelled weird. I can't remember exactly how it's spelled, but anyway, I think I've listened to that. I don't know if I've listened to The Chills, honestly. But I really enjoy their take on like progressive death metal, where it feels like their own. It doesn't feel like, I mentioned Michael Ackerfeld, but it doesn't feel like they're just ripping off of Opeth.
It doesn't.
Which I feel like is kind of the path that a lot of progressive death metal bands have taken since Opeth, because Opeth kind of was, after Chuck Schuldiner died anyway, the progressive death metal band.
Sure.
Until they stopped doing death metal.
Right.
You know, they kind of established themselves as the front of the pack, you know, after death stopped being a thing. Of course, you know, the sort of from Leprosy onward is, you know, when you have really the genesis of progressive death metal with things getting
everything after Scream Bloody Gore, right?
Yeah, basically like Scream Bloody Gore established like this is death metal, and then after that Chuck was like, well, we're gonna start getting weird with it. And I love it for that. But this album I think is a bit more. And I would need to, it hasn't been terribly long since I've re-listened to Idol, but to my ear, This has a bit more going on than Idol did. It's a little bit more experimental, I think, in places than Idol was. And I don't know if that's to this album's benefit or to Idol's detriment. Like, I don't know if it makes this one better or if they're just different.
I did like the progressive elements they put in there, the experimental stuff, the
the avant-garde parts.
I did. I enjoyed that very much, actually.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of these songs I went back and listened to again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've listened to this album several times. Right. Hi, there's a cat that wants my attention, apparently. Right. I've listened to this album several times over the last, week, or not week, over the last few days since I decided this is what we were listening to.
Right.
And yeah, there's definitely a couple of songs in particular that like really kind of caught my ear, so to speak, and made me go back and listen to it. And that was kind of the case with Idol as well, where there's like really sort of specific songs that I was like, I got to listen to that again.
Right.
Not that they're like, I think what ends up happening on their albums is they always have like a couple really strong songs. That it's not that the other songs are weak. It's just that these songs are stronger.
Right. Yeah. All the songs on this are great.
Yeah. There's not, I wouldn't say there's a dull moment on the album.
There is not.
There's a lot to dig your teeth into. And it's one of those, the sound is dense enough to where there is something new to notice every time you re-listen to a song.
Right.
There's something new for you, some new little bit, some new little flourish on a riff or on a lead bit that you maybe didn't notice before. And
they do the thing where it's been very intense for a few songs. We're getting toward the end. Here, let's give you some introspective acoustic, opens for a song. And I'm like, cool, that actually really fits right here. And then we're out of it, You
need a breather for a moment. For sure. I thought there was a burp coming, but there wasn't.
There was no burp.
There was no burp there. Would you say this album slaps?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, yeah. This album absolutely slaps. It goes at most of the time at a fairly breakneck pace, I would say. Slappity dappity dappity. What did you think of the vocals? Because there's two vocalists here.
Right.
There's
the one that sounds like Chuck Schuldiner.
Yeah. I believe that's Damian Herring, who is so the band is made up of Damian Herring, who's one of the vocalists and guitarist, and then Matt Knox, also vocals and guitars. Jamie Knox on drums. That was the personnel for when this album was recorded. They didn't have like a full-time bassist.
Oh, wow.
And then in 2016, Alex Kulik stepped in as their full-time bassist. I think Damian Herring is the one who sounds more like Chuck Schuldiner. And his vocals are always something that I have to reacquaint myself with.
Right.
It's difficult for me to tell just from listening. But like his vocals have this quality to them where to my ear it almost sounds like they're inhale screams, which is something that as someone who used to just kind of amateurishly do some metal vocals, like that's something that I never was willing to do because it just seemed like it was really painful and unsustainable.
Yeah.
I think that just might be a quality of his voice. There's kind of a scratchiness to it, kind of a sort of fragility is maybe not the right word, but there's like a thinness to it.
It seems brittle a bit.
Yeah, a brittleness to them versus what I presume to be Matt Knox's vocals, which are a bit more traditional sounding, kind of death metal vocals. Right. Neither of them are particularly deep or growly. I would characterize both of them as screams rather than like really like deep death growls.
Right.
And as you mentioned, much more in the vein of what Chuck Schuldiner did. Like that is called a death growl, but to me it's not what I would call, like, growl became something different.
Right.
In the 90s, the death growl became deeper and more guttural. When you start having bands like Cannibal Corpse and like Suffocation and so on and so forth that started taking things into a gurglier direction.
And King Diamond.
Yes, famous for his deep guttural vocals, King Diamond. I want to hear King Diamond attempt to do that. I wonder what that would sound like.
I doubt he would.
He doesn't want to ruin those pipes.
Right. He's pushing 70, so I mean,
he's got to keep it together there.
Right. He's only got a few miles left on them pipes.
I guess I haven't sought out any like live performances to see how King Diamond sounds these days. I think I remember seeing something that claimed he sounds pretty damn good still.
Yeah, he does sound pretty damn good
for a man in his 70s at this point, or close to almost 70.
He was born in 56, I want to say.
For a man of his age doing vocals that are that high pitched is pretty incredible. It was incredible that he ever did them at all.
Right.
What's his speaking voice sound like? Do you know? Does he have a very high speaking voice?
No, he's a regular dude. That's all falsetto.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah. Just a regular dude speaking voice.
Yeah, it's just so it's so high up that you would almost think that like, oh, is that just his natural singing voice?
And because you see him without the makeup, and he looks like your uncle.
Yeah, just a normal older man.
Right. Yeah, and he lives in Austin, so I mean,
yeah,
you just imagine you there buying a Crystal Pepsi and you're standing there at the gas station behind,
not knowing you're standing behind King Diamond.
Right.
He's just a totally normal Danish expat. Yeah. And now all I can think of is that picture of Glenn Danzig carrying cat litter. I feel like if anybody knows much about Glenn Danzig, you've probably seen that picture. If not, just look up Glenn Danzig cat litter.
There you go.
Glenn Danzig, if you don't know, is the lead singer of the horror punk band Misfits, whose logo you have definitely seen.
Also Danzig.
Danzig, of course. I guess
he's not their singer now. I mean,
I guess general audiences probably do know him better from Danzig, don't they?
Right, they would. Yeah.
Also, it's his last name. Is that his real last name or is that a stage name?
I think that's a stage name.
Okay. Because
Terwilliger, I think. No, I made that up.
Because
maybe it is.
I'm trying to remember if Danzig is still what it's called or if it's one of those things where it had a Prussian name and a Polish name. Because there's like a city in either Poland or Germany that is called Danzig, I think, or was at one point. But in any case, looking up reviews of this was quite well reviewed when it came out, as has pretty much everything that Horrendous has released. Out of 5 reviews, came out to 85.4, which is pretty good and about what is to be expected. From an album of this caliber, generally reviewed pretty highly, but you'll have some people who like there was nothing below a 75 here, which depending upon the scale that you're using is not even that bad. Music reviews are not quite like game reviews, where if you release a video game and it gets a 75, that means it's a piece of trash,
right?
And no one should touch it,
especially if it's on the hell's the name of that website?
IGN.
IGN, thank you. Yeah.
If IGN gives your game a 7.5, that means it's just absolute hot dog water.
Right. You're lucky they don't come to your house and piss on your mom.
But what's your favorite song on the album?
I mean, you got to go with Ozymandias.
Yeah, it's
although the solipsist is really good as well. But I mean,
I wrote down 2. I wrote down Ozymandias.
Yeah,
and I also wrote down Acolytes.
Yeah,
Acolytes is really fucking good because it goes so many different places too. Because like it goes like. It starts off with kind of sort of opethy. I can't remember if it's acoustic guitar or if it's clean guitar. And then it goes, I think it starts that way. And then it goes into like a short doom metal section. And then it turns into fucking grindcore for a bit.
Right.
And then it ends with like fucking like Deaf Heaven-esque like shoegaze. It's insane. And it all works. It all works. Like it's crazy the places that song goes, and it works really well. But
it still stays a cohesive song.
Yeah. But I do agree with you about Ozymandias.
Yeah.
A absolutely amazing song. And it's like I wonder if calling a piece of media Ozymandias is just like a shortcut to making it good.
Maybe,
because there's a very good episode of Breaking Bad called Ozymandias as well.
There's a character in The Watchmen.
Yes. Yeah. All in reference to a famous poem.
Right.
Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. It's the line.
Yes.
Which is uttered in the song. But Ozymandias is a fantastic song. I think on so many of these songs, like they are so fucking good at like writing just the most killer riffs. Like their riff writing ability is tremendous.
So there's there's a riff that holds that whole song together. That is just really great rock and roll riff. It's really all it boils down to. And that's fantastic. Yeah.
Like they have a great ability for like taking something that at its core, in its bones, it would maybe be more at home in a different genre of rock, and then, applying those layers of sort of extreme metal to it and making it, fit with their sound. And when they do something that is more like traditionally death metal, there's one like really fast picked riff. I cannot remember what song it's from to save my life. It might have been from Acolytes. I can't remember, but like there's a couple like really fast, probably not tremolo picked, but like really like spirally sort of riffs that just absolutely just they slap the hell out of you. I don't know how else to put it. Like there's some really gnarly, really fast riffs on occasion that are, very, very fast picking. That they have a habit of that. And none of those, like, it's frustrating, but also in exactly the right way. Frustrating in exactly the right way, the way they tend to do this. There's a couple riffs like that on Idol as well, where it's like, this is the best riff I've ever heard in my life, and it's over.
Yeah, right.
But then it gets you, moving on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But it also, makes me scrub back because I want to hear the riff again.
Right.
To where, like, it's one of the things I appreciate about Mastodon is like when Mastodon has a really good riff, a lot of times you're going to be hearing it for like a minute.
Right.
And I'm never going to complain about that. Like I could listen to the last 3 minutes of Hearts Alive for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's a really simple riff.
It is,
but it's so big and chunky and amazing. I listened to it yesterday.
It's very Mastodon.
It just like it popped into my head and I was like, oh, it's been a while. I'll listen to that again. And it was fucking awesome. Or was that today? I don't know. Time is a flat circle.
It is.
So the time has come for us to decide what metal we are bestowing upon this album, like Maz Kanata to Chewbacca. Yet another Star Wars reference in this episode.
I feel like it gets gold. I feel like this gets gold. Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly. This is a gold for me. And I'm excited now to hear what new offerings they might have for us soon. I hope they pull a Bell Witch where it's like, hey, we've announced the title of the album and also it's coming out in a week. Like I hope they do that because I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait
for your life to be over.
I definitely don't want to do that because if my life's over, I can't hear the new album.
Exactly.
But I don't want to sit and wait. I think the article I saw talking about them having completed a new album came out in like January. So it's about fucking time, guys. Give me your new album. I've been waiting once every couple of months, I will search Horrendous into Spotify just to see if they snuck a new album out while I wasn't paying attention.
Sure. And
it hasn't happened. And it's been almost 5 years at this point, and I'm just waiting. I want it. Give it to me. So I'm happy that it will be coming out soon. For a while, I was worried that they had broken up.
That would be horrendous.
That would be terrible. Switch. So, what album are we going to listen to next week?
Next week, I thought I'd give you a treat here. This is a
treat for me.
A turning point in metal history. This happened. It was a band that nobody thought was going to go anywhere because they played their music too heavy, too loud, and too fast. In fact,
you're just too dang loud.
Yes. In fact, their music was too fast for love. The seminal piece from Motley Crue.
Yep, say it. Okay. It took me a second. I was like, I know that name. Why do I know that? All right. Okay. Motley Crue.
Motley Crue. Their first album next week. It's
Fast for Love.
It's nothing like anything you've heard before, really.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we can talk a whole bunch about Vince Neil falling off of things.
Yeah, like his ability to sing.
Yeah.
Okay, we should mock the guy. Well, okay, we should mercilessly.
He's gotta know.
So yeah.
He's gotta know how he sounds.
He's an older gentleman, but he definitely has access to YouTube, right? I mean,
like, he has to know that he doesn't sound good. There's no way he gets done and goes, I fucking nailed it.
You know, and he was going to be playing in Minot.
Yeah.
This was it last year?
I remember
before, something
that,
like and then the festival got canceled. I was like, I wanted to go just to hear Vince Neil,
just to see how much of a train wreck it might have been.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll talk more about that next week.
All right.
So until then, why don't you go ahead and follow our social media pages on Facebook and Twitter, and go ahead to
wow.
I do that a lot at work, where when I mess something up, it'll just turn into a scat riff.
What you know what I do when I mess up like that at work? What I do is I make sure I don't try to salvage the segment.
Yeah.
So I said, coming up we've got shitballs tits ass. There's no way I can keep that.
Yeah. I think most of the time I just go, or I start talking in slow motion,
like Samwise.
Yeah. And today we've got a
somebody restart Kale.
Or it's like a tape machine that you've turned off.
Yeah.
And it was in the process of spinning down. But what was I saying? Subscribe to our feed on whatever service you are currently using to listen to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Bronze Medalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ. Congratulations!